So welcome back everyone to the Six Piece podcast, a very special edition. Today we have a special guest who's going to talk to us about comparative writing as we prepare for the SAC, but also the exam. And of course, we know that the comparative SAC is worth a lot more this year, and therefore as a whole, the comparative section will be worth, I think, about 35% of your overall mark for VC English. So today we've been really fortunate to be in the presence of Assessor X, who's going to share with us her knowledge of writing comparative essays in the exam. And hopefully, in fact, I know that all this knowledge is going to transfer into your own writing. So I'll hand it over to Assessor X to talk about comparative essay writing. Welcome, Assessor X. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Jim. Very happy to be here. So hopefully you guys can now see this little PowerPoint that I've put together, just to give you some inside tips and tricks and a bit of an insight into how assessors are trained by VCAR, because obviously it is a bit of a mystery for most people. So just a reminder that each paper is marked twice out of 10. So you're talking 20 marks in total. So each mark matters a lot. When you're thinking about the average SAC, your written SACs at least anyway, would be out of 30 or 40 or even 60 marks. 1 mark doesn't really matter that much. But now, if you're thinking 1 mark out of 10, which then gets doubled, that's quite a lot. I won't try and do the maths because obviously I'm an English assessor, but you can work it out, it's a lot. English assessors are trained to think of everything on a scale of being from 0 to 10, and it's a ranking process. And initially, while you're reading a paper, obviously it's quite difficult. It's a holistic process, which means that you are assessed on a little bit of everything put together, rather than losing marks for this or gaining marks for that. So as you're reading, you've got the essay in front of you. You are trying to decide, is this an upper script, a middle script, or a lower script? Your upper would be from 8 to 10, your middle from 4 to 7, and your lower from 0 to 3. So once you've got that in your mind, you then narrow it down a little bit further and try and pinpoint an actual mark. One thing to take note of at the moment is there's a big jump, or not a big jump, but like a big kind of step between 7 and 8. So between that upper middle and the actual upper band. And I want to talk a little bit about that later. In terms of what this means for success for the comparative, you really need to get an understanding of how to be successful for section A, which is your text response section. On this slide, you'll be able to see there's a triangle there, and it just shows you the 3 different things that are really important, and this is what the criteria reflects. Obviously, your knowledge of the text, how well you write, but the thing at the top, the main thing, the most important thing is how you actually respond to the topic. And this is exactly the same for section B, the comparative. It's just even more important in some ways, which I will go on to show you now. So I just said criteria, but it's actually called expected qualities. And here are some of the ones from the section A. You'll see that I've highlighted a few of the different parts. So and this is everything kind of from the middle to the top. So for a 6 or a 7, you just need a basic response to the topic or something that shows you understand the topic. Obviously anything lower than that, and then you're not even going to get your 6 marks. To get through that kind of boundary between the 7 and the 8 that I said was really important, this word implications comes in. So for 8, you need to demonstrate an understanding of the implications of the topic. For 9 and 10, demonstrates an understanding of the implications of the topic, and then using appropriate strategies and doing more of what you would expect from the really, really top essays. I might just skip a slide there actually, because it's important to think, well, what does this mean? I might think, what implications? I don't understand what that means. VCAR want to see that you have unpacked the topic, you have analysed it, you've understood it, you know what it means, you've thought about individual words, and thought about how you can deal with that. Not just replication and repetition. So not just taking a keyword from a topic and putting it in every topic sentence and thinking, great, I've shown that I've done that. That, if you're lucky, might get you a 6, depending on everything else, because that is a response to the topic. It's not off topic, but it's certainly not going to get you anything higher than that. Now, if we backtrack to this slide, expected qualities for section B, it's quite similar. Obviously, everything is with comparison, but still this importance on topic. And the key difference here is, rather than this important word implications of, or phrase rather than that coming in at 8, so the upper marks, this comes in at 7. So even more important that you were dealing adequately and appropriately with the topic. Moving on, so thinking about how do you actually demonstrate this? Obviously, you need a strong contention. This is pretty obvious stuff, but it's, as we said there, it needs to be really, really clear to get into those higher marks. It needs to be consistent. We need to be able to see it from the start all the way through to the end of your essay, which again is quite difficult with this. I remember the first assessors training I went to, and it was the first year that the comparative was brought in, and they actually asked, you know, for a show of hands, who's had a go of writing one of these essays themselves? And we all put our hands up, and they laughed and just shook their heads and went, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? So VCAR understands this is a difficult task, and it is difficult because it's so lengthy and you've got to grapple with 2 different texts. So maintaining a consistent contention all the way through is even more difficult, but just as important. Same with text response. So section A, you must deal with all aspects of the topic. You can't just pick and choose the parts that you like, even if you do decide to argue a particular side of it. You have to deal with everything that's there, whether you like it or not. This reminds me of one of the topics, I think it was from the 2018 exam. And obviously I'm going to refer to a number of topics. This is the first year the dressmaker's on. So they do refer to the Crucible and Year of Wonders. It's fine. They'll still probably work with a dressmaker, but it gives you an idea of the task. This particular topic said, in the Crucible and Year of Wonders, the leaders of the communities are misguided. Compare how this idea is explored. A lot of people gave a list of bad leaders. So they latched onto this idea of leaders being misguided. Thought, right, I know a lot of leaders. I know leaders that have done bad things. I've even managed to pair them up and compare them quite well. And if people had done that, and if they'd written it quite well, that could be a fairly decent response. That could be something that's getting you a 6, because that's the showing an understanding of the topic. It's not going to get you any higher than that, though, because that's not thinking about the implications of the topic. What you really need to do is think about, what does the word misguided mean? What is making these people misguided? I always like to think any of these topics, you can just add the word why on the end. So who is misguided? Why? What is causing them to do what they're doing? That is what VCAR wants you to be writing about. So back to how do we show this again? Obviously you need to have your contention evident in the right places in your essay. This is standard stuff. So your intro, conclusion, topic and linking sentences. A little bit more on topic sentences in a minute, but linking sentences are particularly important for this because your body paragraphs will be longer, sometimes slightly unwieldy. It can be easy for you to get lost. It can be easy for us, the people reading and marking them, to get lost, and you don't want that. If an assessor feels the need to go back and reread something, you're already not doing a good job in terms of your written expression, and you're more likely to lose some marks. So if you've got a nice linking sentence at the end, it's a good way to remind everybody what the point is, to finish it off, tie it up, and make sure it's really clear. Your vocabulary is really important. Mentioned before, they don't just want you to replicate whatever the keywords in the topic are. We want varied, fluent, elevated vocabulary choices. Lots of synonyms, but obviously ones that work well. And you want to carefully choose your evidence. And obviously, again, this is even more difficult because you're not just working with one set of quotes or one set of examples, but working with two different ones because you've got two texts. One thing that we always look for when we mark is that the point that you're making, so your topic and your linking sentence, it needs to match your examples. So you can't kind of wander off and be like, oh, well, that's a good example, or that's a good comparison you've made, but it doesn't actually quite fit with the point. Back to topic sentences themselves, and I've put this in rather large font just to make the point, and I probably could walk away at this moment because this is the best piece of advice you can get. Your topic sentences must, absolutely must, focus on ideas present in the topic. And I've put themes in brackets there because ideas is the new term that VCAR want to use for themes. It's the same thing. But they found a lot of students have concentrated on characters or something else, or done quite vague or quite general topic sentences. That's not what the task is about. They want you focusing on the ideas or themes that link the two texts together. And if you look at all of the topics, they will be theme-based. Even if they appear to be character-based, that's not what they want. They want it on the ideas. Couple of examples. So this is from the 2017 exam. Ordinary people sometimes make extraordinary sacrifices for others. Compare how this idea is demonstrated in these texts. So that seems to be pointing you in the direction of characters. And obviously you will talk about characters in any comparative essay, that's fine. It's how you do it and where you do it. So they do not want you to have topic sentences that introduce pairs of ordinary characters who make sacrifices for other people or who don't. What they want you to do is make a point about why ordinary characters are making sacrifices for other people or choosing not to. They don't want to have paragraphs that are just full of description of what characters do, what happens, so basic kind of plot stuff. That's not actually analysing anything. They want you to use the characters to illustrate and explore the points that are made about these ideas. Another good tip, and this is something that they always tell us to watch out for, it's a bit of a pet hate of theirs, beware the double idea. A lot of the topics will feature two different ideas or themes, and they don't want you to do this thing that they term hyphenate. So in other words, putting these two things together and treating them as one. So a perfect example was the other topic from the 2017 exam. Compare how the Crucible and Year of Wonders explore issues of victimization and blame. These are related ideas. They are not one idea, though they are not the same thing. The amount of essays I read were in every topic sentence, victimization and blame, victimization and blame. And sometimes people had done the right thing that we advise in class and use some synonyms, but still always lumping the two or hyphenating the two ideas together. Do not do that. They hate it. That will keep you in the lower end or the middle at best. I often think as well, if you're someone who struggles with essay structure, this is a gift, because it's, if you're doing 3 body paragraphs, 1 paragraph victimization, 1 blame, 1 on how these two interplay with each other, interact with each other, influence each other. Really easy. There you go. Not that you would have to answer it like that, but that would certainly be a way.
And that's a nice little segue into one of our other videos that looks into the topic of, in these texts, how, I think it was forgiveness and judgment, I think. So our viewers can go and watch that video if they like, to look at how those, or that particular essay topic, can be addressed.
Yeah, they do like the double idea. Thinking about body paragraph structure now. This is something that's kind of evolved as this particular section of the exam or SAC outcome, whatever you want to call it, has. Because obviously it was new in 2017, but each year VCAR have kind of refined what they want to see once they've seen what students have actually done with it, which isn't great for you guys or teachers. That's why you need tips from assessors. So there's some diagrams here. You've got just, sections that represent different parts of a paragraph. The one on the left there, the first one, is what they do not want to see, where you've just got one text and then you've got some sort of linking word in the middle, like similarly, and then you talk about the next text. So you've picked your examples, you've linked them together. Even if they're on topic, that's really, really not good and will get you not many marks. The one to the side of that is the one that I usually start off with teaching in class, is like the really, really basic, this is your starting point. It's more acceptable than that first one, but not a lot. So this is where you've got your topic sentence and your linking sentence, where you would be making a point that is theme-based, idea-based, and obviously relates back to the topic. But you've still got all of your text examples in separate slabs. So it's topic sentence, talk about one text, linking word, second text, linking sentence. It's a good starting point, but you don't want to stop there. Because if you look back at some of the other criteria for this section, it talks about being able to show comparison through the structure that you've used. So it's really important. Here are another couple of diagrams that show different options, and the options are endless. Like, you always must start with your topic sentence and then with your linking sentence. That's never going to change. What you do in the middle with those two texts is really, really flexible. The first one shows a bit more of a weave. So one text, second text, back to one, back to two. So that could involve two sets of examples kind of related on the same point. The other one is more where you've got a section where you would talk about both of the texts together. So rather than it just being them separate and joined together with linking words or phrases, you've got sections where you do actively compare the two together. And that could appear anywhere. That could be something where you develop your topic sentence and get into that. It could be a bit in the middle, a bit at the end, wherever, but it's really good. And if you can do that, I would definitely encourage you to do that. There's something else I wanted to say about that, but I've forgotten now. Never mind. On to some of the tips and things and ideas for getting higher marks. Oh, that was it, sorry. We'll backtrack. So the advice from VCAR was they don't want this to look like a text essay in disguise. Having large slabs of where you just analyse one text, and then even if it's quite well linked together, it's not what they consider the task to be. They want you to really actively compare. So yeah, thinking about that is good. Anyway, back to tips. Don't forget to contrast. Really, really important. You probably would have heard this before, but the convention is, or has been, for all of the topics to just say compare. The contrast is implied. Don't forget that that is a part of it. Remember, particularly when you get to the exam, you are writing for somebody who has read a lot of these. The assessors are capped at 150 essays a day, meaning that the thought is that if you do any more than that, you wouldn't be doing a very good job. I've only ever got to 120 something a day, and after that, my brain was mush. So anything you can do to stand out in an appropriate fashion, obviously, is good. So choose some different examples. Every year, you can tell the study guides that have been going around, because it's always these same kind of pairs of examples, or people don't really move away from the protagonists or the main events. Try and learn some different ones to use, or some different or interesting interpretations of ideas. When you're planning for this, there's only so many places you can go. There are only so many ideas that link these texts together. try and at least think of a different pairing or something different you could say about each one. Because if you can get that assessor's attention, they're more likely to spend a little bit more time on yours, and you're more likely then to be moving up the marks. For the people that are looking at the upper range, so your 8 to 10, they really want to see, like, if you've got everything else sorted, you've got your structure, you've looked at the implications of the topic, they want to see that deeper analysis. So text structure, symbols, language use. Do not forget the Crucible is a play, and you were comparing it with a novel. There is a whole wealth of stuff that you could say about the fact that one is a play and one is a novel. Obviously, you wouldn't just write about that. You wouldn't just throw that in somewhere. It needs to be related to the broader point that you were making in relation to your argument on the topic, which is why it's the higher mark stuff, because that's a lot to do. But if you start to practice that now, so when you're preparing your examples, when you're learning your examples, you're learning your quotes, if you think, right, where can I get a reference to something symbolic in or something to do with the structure in, you're more likely to be able to remember it and pull it out and use it on the day. Last kind of tip, one of the main things that matters, and if you go back to that triangle initially at the start, is your quality of writing. Written expression goes a long way. If you've been marking all day and you get to read something that is clear and easy to understand, it's so much better. And just being able to get your ideas across in a succinct, fluent, coherent manner is a really important English skill, which is why it's one of the 3 criteria for this. So work on your writing. Accuracy matters, particularly when it comes to, like I said, your expression, your sentence structure. If you've got the odd capital in the wrong place or the odd word misspelt, as long as your writing flows and the examiner's not having to stop and go back and reread, it definitely equals marks in the long run. I'd probably say the last thing would be just a reminder about handwriting, and that's probably really pertinent this year because everybody obviously has spent a lot of time at home and typing a lot more than they would have been writing. Handwriting does matter. Examiners are more forgiving, or assessors I should say, are more forgiving than people think. They are told to read every single word, and if you can't understand it, we can send it off and get someone who's very good at that kind of thing to read it. But you don't want to make people do that. You want it to be legible. So now is a good time to start practicing your handwriting at home. Start timing yourself as well, because that matters. And just the last thing on clarity, it's not just about handwriting. Sometimes people do a lot of crossings out and things. Remember that all of these will be read off a screen. It's not paper, it's all scanned, it's all over screen. Don't have too many things where you've crossed out and written over it. It's fine if you cross out a section and write under it. Even sometimes when people do things with asterisks and arrows, your assessor will, you know, they'll make an effort to try and keep up, but don't make it really, really hard. It's mainly the crossing out and the writing over the top where you just can't read it. Anyway, I think that's pretty much everything from me, unless you've got any questions.
So I guess that's a really good summation, and it's really great insight that you've been able to provide us with when it comes to this section, particularly on the exam. I was just going to ask, I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, in terms of this pair being new, and the fact that assessors wouldn't have read essays on this before, any tips on that? Because I know some students are worried about maybe being a bit too extreme with their unique interpretations and forgetting about, like, the protagonists, for example.
Ooh, that's a good question. No, I think people will welcome a change. I know that from a teacher's point of view, it's been tricky because we've got a head full of pairs of examples on the other texts, where now it's harder kind of trying to teach it with this new text involved. Obviously students wouldn't experience that because it's all new for them. I think certainly marking them, it will be it'd be nice for a change. Like I said, anything's good for a change, really. There's no hard and fast rules on, like, if you left out all of the protagonists and focused on minor characters, that certainly wouldn't lose you any marks. You don't want to go too far with out there interpretations. Obviously, it still needs to be in the realms of what the author intended or how the text could generally be interpreted. I know we probably have as well. We've got students who try and argue a really interesting point, but like, well, English, you know, you're free to interpret things however you want. You're like, not really, especially if you've taken something out of context, and you're up against people that really, really, really know the text. So yeah, I'd just say take care a little bit, but I don't think the new book will be a worry.
Cool. That's great to know. Just in terms of with that, we're talking about next level analysis and getting that 8 to 10 is sort of analysing the way in which the authors convey meaning through like language and structure and style. Is that a really good way that you can really build your mark?
Absolutely. Definitely. If you can do that well, say when you read it, like I said, the initial thing is by the time you throw an intro in the first topic sentence, your brain's already trying to put that paper into one of those categories. So if you can wow your assessor in your intro and your first topic sentence, if they're already thinking you're an 8 to a 10, it's quite hard to then fall out of it. Obviously, if you stop writing or wandered off and did something ridiculous in the middle of your essay. But yeah, definitely.
And just one final question, and it's one that I guess we get asked a lot. It's about the dreaded conclusion. And what your thoughts are on, say, especially we are writing under time conditions, if there's 10 minutes to go and we're looking at our last main body paragraph, is it worthwhile cutting that a little bit short and writing a conclusion, or should we just finish off that main body paragraph to the same consistent length as the other main bodies?
From our point of view, I would rather have completed body paragraphs. And a conclusion should only be short. If anything, you just want to return to the contention. So it can be one sentence. So, and that can be what, 30 seconds, if that.
Cool. That's great. Last question for me. I'd like to know if you were, I mean, based on the Crucible and the Dressmaker, who maybe your favorite characters are, who that resonate with you that you'd love to write on if you got given an essay topic.
Ooh, I don't know. Who I like from the Crucible, I like Abigail, which is a terrible person. Wouldn't want to meet her. Certainly wouldn't want to be a friend. Certainly wouldn't want to be John Proctor.
No, don't have an affair with her.
But in terms of someone who is, you know, the catalyst for all the action, and just, you know, love a villain. But yeah, dressmaker wise, I don't know. I'm going to try and think, and maybe I could come back to this at some point, who I would want to see in an essay. I remember before it was just all Proctor with the Crucible, like, oh come on, put somebody else in.
And
I don't know. I have to think about that.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. I think it is interesting how John Proctor does get a lot of attention in essays, though, which is fair enough. He's the protagonist, but so much of Act 1 revolves around Abigail. And you're right, she's the catalyst. She's what sparks this whole thing, this 17-year-old orphan, which is pretty incredible when you think about it.
Definitely. From the Dressmaker, who would you want to write about?
There's a couple of characters I really like. I really like Molly. I like her honesty. I think that's really cool to look at that. That would be the first one I'd like to add in as like a secondary character to sort of look at. Of the others, I'm not too sure. I think the male characters, we despise them a lot, and they'd be quite good to write on. I do like Marigold and Irma and the way they gain revenge, and in different ways as well to an extent. So yeah, those are the characters I'd like to look at, I think, from the Dressmaker. What about you?
I think I I'm more as well trying to guess which ones are going to be overused. I think because the Crucible relies so heavily on religion to inform everything, and the dressmaker doesn't, where we've got Almanac because he's the only character that really seems to have these fervent religious beliefs, and obviously it's really good in terms of him misusing that and abusing people and his position in the town. But I can already see in every essay it's just going to be Almanac paired up with someone like Paris or Danforth, which could be fine, but after 2 days of it, I think he'd be bored. I quite like Faris. I think he would be interesting.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I think already I'm seeing a little bit of him actually in some of the paragraphs, which is really cool. And even we were having a discussion in class the other day. I was talking about how he's a bit of an outsider, a bit of an outcast. And another student was saying, actually, I don't think that's the case at all, because he hides himself so much. He puts on a show. He's actually conforming to the expectations of masculinity and this conservative rural town.
Very true.
So that was a good little debate. But we're out of time. I just want to say a massive thank you to Assessor X for her time today and what I think is really valuable insights. I have written down a lot of notes. So I look forward to, I think I'm going to be reviewing this before the SAC and also before the exam. It's such valuable insight. And thank you so much for taking out the time today to chat to us.
That's all right. It was a pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me.